Be part of the most exclusive screenwriting retreat out there. It's designed as a bucket list vacation to experience an African safari in South Africa, coupled with world-class mentorships with established names in Hollywood. Visit screenwritersafari.com. Thanks so much for joining me today. And just so everybody knows, we actually set this up in October 2021. So yeah, I appreciate your time and I'm very, very grateful. And just to give you a very quick introduction of everybody, and you guys can introduce yourselves and also then tell us, you know, why you each love doing what you do. So Dan is a renowned writer producer on some of our all-time favorite shows, Cheers, Frasier, Modern Family, and now he's producing and editing all his own stuff and gets invited to do lectures and all kinds of things. Dan, do you want to give us a little bit more on you?
That was it. You left nothing for me. No. I mean, I've been doing this for a zillion years, and I have gone through. I have a love-hate relationship with writing, and but I do enjoy, you know, teaching and mentoring and that sort of thing. And hopefully I say the things that I wish people had said to me. So that's it.
Cool.
Someone else.
Okay, Meg. Meg, you've got a lot of award nominations, Inside Out Oscar nomination. Everybody loves your Facebook page and your podcasts, and we all look forward to it every week. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself and why you love doing what you're doing.
Well, I mean, yeah, I see a lot of TSLers over here on the chat, so that's super fun to see you guys here. Thanks for coming by, and to everybody else too. You know, today is not a good day to ask me why I like writing, because today, very specifically, I don't. Like, I could say that I hate it today. Now, this might change in an hour. But, you know, I had a bad phone call today, really bad. Like the kind that you have when you're a professional that you're like, this is the dumbest job. Why am I putting myself through it? But that's just part of it. We talk about it all the time on the podcast. I'm definitely in the fuck you stage. Let me just put it that way. So I'm really not liking it. But if I can get above it today in my brain, if I can try to get above the current situation I'm in, I for myself, I love creating characters and worlds, and what I love about it is that you can take somebody that on the face of it, if you pass them on the street, you would never connect to them, you'd never understand them, you'd never be friends with them, but by the end of this movie you are so deeply connected to that person, and so in their world and their perspective, that you've actually had a cathartic change with them. That to me is a profound experience to share with other people, and we get to do it in such a big way, in such a big audience way across the world. I think that it can shift things, small ways, personal ways. I mean, I'm sure we've all had this experience, people, writers walking up to you, and not writers, people who've seen your movies and saying, or TV shows, and saying, you know, it really spoke to me. You know, it's like you were talking to me, and that's a really great thing to be able to do. It's also, it's not the easiest thing to do, but so that's why I like to do it, and I like to mentor, because I really love now pulling those kinds of stories out of other people, and what is the story they're trying to tell, because the world needs it. So I like doing it for other people too.
Oh,
so that's why I do.
Well, that's great to hear, Megan. You know, some of you may have seen that I posted something on my Facebook page. I was reading a book by Brené Brown, who some of you may know. She is a researcher, storyteller. But what I just came across this section in the middle of the book where she did a qualitative research over 100,000 people and asked them which were there like saddest movies that had the most emotional impact? And Inside Out was one of them. And I just thought that was just like, what an accolade.
Yeah, I write sad.
I had no idea
I'm
about
good at
that. I
sad.
just saw. And Jen, you are very familiar to many TV writers, and your credentials of getting TV pilots sold is second to none, and your teleseminar is infamous. But tell us about yourself and why you love doing what you're doing, or not.
I know, Meg, I love the emotional truth that you shared. I thought that was phenomenal. I came up the ranks in a different way. I was a studio executive for 12 years. Aaron Spelling was my mentor. And then I was a writing instructor for Writers on the Verge at NBC for 13 years. At the same time, I started my own company and I worked with writers. And I love the arc of growth in what starts in a concept, in a seed of an idea or a life experience, and seeing what happens between the birth of the concept and the outcome of the script. And going into the idea of what Meg says, I think, like, helping us get to know you through your message and recognizing the value of your worldview and what you have to say. That's my favorite part.
Thank you. And I want to just tell you something about Jen that always sticks out in my mind, because when I started writing, I write historical dramas, and everyone tells you historical dramas, there's no point because, no one's going to buy them. And I remembered you saying that, well, look who wins all the awards. And I always remember that giving me great motivation. And besides that, everyone's always very aware of their age in this business, and I always love that you always are an advocate for older writers, because a lot of us have good stories to tell and more experience, and some of us maybe not so much, but that's something I've always appreciated about you too.
Well, writing is, the older you get, the better you get. That's just the bottom line. So it's like our business needs to start embracing the idea that writing is the one thing that as you have more life experience, you have more to say to the world. And that's important.
Yeah. Cool. And Joey is just doing the most amazing things for writers. I can't even keep track how many writers you have got managers now, or agents. How many is it as of today? Because
as of today, it's 241. Hopefully that'll change by the end of the day. But yeah, so far it's 241. And I actually, just kind of piggybacking with Jen, I only have one rule I follow at Roadmap, and that is whatever Jen says, do it. that's the rule. Follow Jen's advice. But yeah, we're approaching our 6-year anniversary. Before Roadmap, I used to work at a company called Bold Films. I did Drive and Whiplash. And for us, we train writers. We're a writer advocacy company. We work with a lot of writers from all over the world, and also helping them get in front of execs. What I do all day, every day, is reading writers' scripts, send them out to execs that we work with, reps, to see if they want to meet them, sign them. And it's just a never-ending process of working with writers that I feel are good humans first. And we'll talk about this later, but I always tell writers, you're a human first and a writer second. And for me, I'm all about the human first and just helping them get in front of execs and try to push them along in their career.
Well, Joey, that's exactly why I'm just so happy that you're coming to the Safari, because each and every one of you brings something completely different. And I appreciate that you actually, you invest time in reading scripts. I know you don't get time to read every single word of every single page, but I'd love you to talk about voice later, because you always have an interesting take on that. And thanks for what you do. But okay, let's get into some questions. And guys, if you, the panelists, we've got over 100 people, please post your questions in the Q&A and we'll try to get to them if we can. I've got a few things that I wanted to ask all our mentors. So Jane, you actually touched on it.
Dan has a question. I'll
Thank you, Meg.
Dan. I'll talk for you. Dan
Thank you. God bless you. I mean, this is kind of a bit of a free for all and stuff. I wanted to add something to something that Jen said, if it's all right. And it's about old people getting better as they get older. And yet there is, sometimes more than others in different times, there have been a lot of ageism and stuff like that. And when I came up and I was a young writer, we would have some old writers in the room. And I remember thinking as a kid, boy, I really want to have a long career. And I really studied what made their careers go a long time. And there were two kinds of old writers. And there were the one kind that was still, this would be like the mid 80s when I started. And these were the guys that were still writing the stuff that was funny back in the 60s. And they were still phrasing things like old Bob Hope jokes. Like, I don't want to say blank, you know, but then there were and those were the ones that the younger writers didn't much respect a lot. And then there were the older writers who were continuing to live life, who had not gotten married to formulas that later became hackneyed. Okay. So while yes, writers can get better as they get older, that's if they keep their eyes open, if they keep living, if they keep seeing life around them and keep engaging, and not decide one day, I know how to write, and then lock it in, because the moment they lock it in, they're dead. And so if you are going to be one of those old writers sitting around a table, you'd better be the one that is still alive, you know? And there's just something that popped into my head when Jen was speaking.
That's so interesting you say that, because I mean, I love that. I posted something on my Facebook page about Sean Penn. He's in Ukraine or whatever, and he's doing a documentary. Anyway, I just thought it was a cool thing, but of course, everyone's always got an opinion. And someone derogatorily said, oh, he's just trying to remain relevant. Anyway, I didn't comment, but I thought, isn't that the whole point? Is we all need to continue to remain relevant. And yeah, so I appreciate that. Thanks, Dan. That's very insightful. So should we, Jen, you touched on, you know, conceptualizing stories and stuff. And, you know, I was thinking about this, and, you know, some people have ideas that just flow out of them. Like they just don't even have enough time to write the stories that they want to. And others sometimes need to come up with new concepts. So I'd like to hear from all of you. What would your approach be and your considerations to the very first stages of conceptualizing or testing the strength of a story idea? So Jen, do you want to take that one first?
Sure. Yeah. So I think, you know, part of coming up with a concept is absorbing the themes that are going on in the world at the time. So I am all about, right, you are passionate about, use your emotional truth. So I love it when I feel the themes that are going on in the world that connect with maybe the theme that is going on in the writer's life at the time that they are writing the concept. So it is all about setting up, why are you the perfect writer to be writing what you are writing? And rather than looking at the market, looking at your passion and your truth that is coming through you for the concept, and recognizing, certainly when you're writing television, do you have a strong enough engine of story, and thinking about what is the transformation. So those are some of the main points that I look for at the concept base.
Cool. Yeah, transformation. And Meg, what is when you start writing, what would your process be to check that it's got enough engine to keep going, and why it's strong enough?
Well, for me, it's I used to be a producer, so my brain will bounce back and forth between the two things. It always starts very much with why do I care about this story idea that is percolating? What emotionally is drawing me in? That doesn't mean I intellectually know larger things, because I might not. I just might know this character just keeps coming back and coming back. I don't even know if they're the main character. I don't even know that if they're not the main character, who is the main character? I just start asking questions of the story, and then images keep coming. And, you know, I have an idea right now. It's a little seed of an idea. So I found myself so I had some people over outside for drinks, and I suddenly was like, hey, I have a new idea for a movie. I mean, it's not a whole idea. It's a little tiny piece of an idea, but what do you think about this? And I just started pitching.
And what is that idea?
I just started telling it, and I know it's not a full idea. I know it doesn't have an engine. I know that, but by telling it, I'm forcing me to tell it. I'm forcing me to say what this is, and then suddenly by their immediately starting to ask me questions, I'm like, oh, that's a good, I don't know, and then I'm pulling it up like clay to work with later. I can do that by doing puke drafts and just writing. I sometimes have the character talk to me. I talk to friends or people and throw it out there who I trust. So I do a lot of things to pull the clay up, and then once I have enough clay, I might say, well, what is this? Like, is it a genre? Is it a feature? Is it a TV show? What from the outside now is this? I start to form that, and then I go back the other direction and do a puke draft, maybe of a document, and then I go back to outline. So I'm always bouncing back and forth for me between that deep dreamlike state of that doesn't have intellect and is just letting the characters talk and be what they want. And then the more intellectual stuff of what could you say, tell this story to somebody? What is the genre? What would that transformation be if this was the main character? What's the main relationship? I start asking those bigger questions to try to identify what this is. And then I just go back and forth until I either am like, yeah, I don't like it, or that didn't work.
Yeah.
Or I
and
have
depending
something.
what your friends say outside.
Well, even if they don't like it, that doesn't bother me because I don't have anything yet. It just means they aren't relating to this piece of my dream. It's like telling somebody your dream and they're like, I don't know what a falcon means to you. Like, I don't know what your dream metaphors are, but I know what my dream metaphors are. And by them, the danger of doing this, I will just say, and then I'll be quiet, is if you do it too soon to the wrong person and you get that flat-eyed look, it could scare you off the idea. Like, oh, I guess it's no good, which I did a whole thing where I did tons of research for a year. And then they put me out in a general and I did all these general meetings and I started telling them this idea. And I got such flat-eyed responses from the executives that I just abandoned it, which I now regret because it was just too soon. I didn't have a story yet. I just had a world. And then it wasn't a story. So I wasn't storytelling to them. And you got to story tell an exec who's exhausted and you have to draw them in like a campfire. And I wasn't doing that. So I'm giving advice that I also am trying to qualify that if you're going to try to talk it out, make sure it's a trusted person who's ready with their glass of wine and wants to do this process with you and get into the mud with you, not necessarily sit back and judge it necessarily.
Yeah, we'll get in the way.
I find, and this last thing I'll say, I find emerging writers do this all the time where they sabotage themselves, where they do go too soon to the person they know will kill them. Like that is the most judgmental person they know because they're actually unconsciously trying to stop themselves. So that's the quickest way to self-sabotage. So there, anyways, okay, there you go.
Wow. Yeah. And that is the truth that I think we don't talk about enough. Joey, do you want to talk about like, I know you don't do a lot of writing, but you do a lot of reading. And what is it that you would look for in the strength of a story engine?
Well, first up, I made the mistake of looking at the attendees and I see so many amazing names. So I'm so good to see so many people on here that I know and like. So for, kind of like what Jen was saying too, is I'm a big advocate of a writer's personal logline. Why are they writing in the first place? What themes do they like to explore? What's important to them? What makes them the most important person to write the story, to make it authentically? I've been working with writers for about 10 years, and the shift in the past 2 years has shifted so much about who the writer is. What do they bring from their own life to make sure that it influences their writing? So I think for anybody trying to figure out what to write next, I feel like sometimes writers look too far out to see what other people are doing and like, oh, Meg's writing this, so maybe I want to write something like this because Meg's very successful, or I want to look out there and write something that somebody else is doing because I'm inspired by them. But usually the answer is right under their nose and what they bring to the story, whether it's period piece, whether it's big budget, low budget, it's irrelevant. It's really being able to write something that when an exec reads it and then they talk to you, they're like, oh, wow, this person is the perfect person to write this story. It's undeniable. And it's interesting. I get a lot of emails from reps, and before it was, I'm looking for a sci-fi writer. I'm looking for an action writer. Now it's more, I'm looking for a writer with a unique background. I'm looking for a writer with a unique point of view. So embrace that, whatever, without being too like therapeutic, but usually for me, the personal logline is the one thing that you suppressed the most growing up, the one thing that you felt the most ashamed of, the most embarrassed of. That's the magic sauce. Bring that in, because that's what's going to make you stand out. And just being able to put that into all your scripts, I think, is magic.
Yeah, thanks, Joey. Yeah, I was going to talk about log lines, but we will talk about that now.
Can I piggyback on that real quick? I'm sorry, Dan, I'm jumping in your
Absolutely.
space, but just so, because it won't link later. I have found when I'm helping writers, the thing that's blocking them, it's so interesting that you're saying that, Joey, that the source is that shame. And I've never thought of it that way, but now that you say that, the thing that I find blocks them is whatever survival mechanism they put in place as a child. They're still using
Wow.
it because their brain is telling them this will keep you safe, but it's now killing the writing. And it's a beautiful trusting process to sit with one of us and trust us intimately, to take your hand and take you into the water back towards that shame, that trauma. Kind of helping you ease it and not go into safe from that. So anyways, just wanted to jump on that because very much I do as well, but in a side of it.
Yeah, I love that. You were just freezing a little bit, but I love that. And I think it's for a writer, you have to like really sit and like meditate a little bit before you write, and being comfortable about going back into what you suppress the most, because that is, to Meg's point, just that is what's going to make you stand out.
I think on top of that is that you don't go back alone. You know, you lived it alone growing up, but when you go back and you're putting it out there, you're no longer alone, because you've come around to the possibility that other people will know what you're talking about. And for the first time, you get to go back holding their hands, the viewers, the readers, whatever, and go back, and I see it in themselves. They are with you. You know, you use the audience to be your witness to what you went through. You know, in comedy, I've been asked before, you know, I want to write comedy. Should I remember all the funny things that happened to me and my friends? And I always say no. I say, well, remember everything, because all the things you and your friends do that are so funny, in 10 years, that'll make you roll your eyes. All the stuff that makes you want to kill yourself today is going to be hilarious in 10 years. And that's just the way life works. Any kind of distance allows you to go back and safely revisit. And it's a skill, and it's a wonderful tool.
Yeah,
that is awesome. I love that. But it's true. It's actually nice to have to be able to go back in the past with somebody, and you're not alone.
Can I say one more thing too? That this is also like, just when you're like talking to other people, and Meg was saying, like, if you don't understand what my vision is, then that doesn't mean I'm going to stop it. I think it's important too that when you're approaching people with your concepts, is finding somebody that will give feedback, but also really understand where you're coming from. I don't write, I'm not a writer, but I am gay. So if I was a writer writing about gay characters, I would probably first like talk to other people that are gay, that understands what I'm trying to get across. Because if I go to like the straightest person at Gersh that's kind of more bro-y, they might not totally understand. I'm just using Gersh as an example, by the way. They might not understand what I'm trying to get across. So I think it's about really choosing the people that are in your tribe that get what you're trying to get across.
Because eventually you'll get deep enough that it doesn't matter if you're a bro, if you're gay, if you're a Gersh, if you're in Mars, if you're anywhere, because color, creed, sex, nothing that will matter, because you've gone to the human condition. Mm-hmm. And that is also the work that mentors and development does, in the best sense of the word, when it's got the best objective, and it doesn't always, we can talk about that later, which is to bring out that very specificity of yourself. The more specific you get, the more it speaks to the human condition. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is an oxymoron that people have to understand. The more detail specific you can get in your experience, the broader it reaches. I know it doesn't, but it absolutely is true.
Thanks for that. Yeah, cool, guys. Okay, so yeah, we spoke a lot about the concepts, and the other thing about starting a story is the log lines. And I know that log lines are spoken like, you know, to death on all social media platforms and everywhere. But what I wanted to ask you guys is, do you think that it's better to actually do your log line up front, or retrospectively write your log line. And not only that, I also wanted to know specifically about how it works in a writer's room. Like for each episode, do the actual writers write the log lines, or do the producers end up doing the log lines, or are those done up front, or where do those fit in? Maybe lots of people know this question, but I don't. Who's going to go
Oh,
first?
Dan, yeah.
What?
Dan, you tell us what happens in a sitcom writer's room when it comes to log lines for the next episode or whatever.
We write them for the executives so that they don't have to read the rest of the document. But I mean, it's good to look. It's just good to know what the episode is. It's a thumbnail. It's like at a glance. This is what the episode's about. Okay, interesting. Now let's read the real stuff. I mean, log lines are a tiny thing in my mind. To me, they're almost like an afterthought. I don't like write a log line first and then write a script. What if the script doesn't turn out that way? What if I find a better thing later? Why did I waste time on a log line? It's like I just slap them on at the end. And maybe I'm in the minority. I really don't know. I don't put any importance to them at all. I mean, I put them there because people have to read them, but it's like, it's like,
See, I'm the opposite.
This is the longest
This
is the longest I've ever talked about log lines.
I'm the opposite. I think that if your logline doesn't work, your story doesn't work. So why do you go to the page and feel the frustration because you don't have some sense of the framework of what your story is? But I come from the executive worldview.
Right.
So I have been trained with log lines my entire career. And so for me, the value of the log line is the framework of your story. And obviously you can revise that as you write your story, but having a blueprint to start with where to go, I feel like the log line does.
Well, I'll counter that. I think that, look, and by the way, I have nothing against them. I just don't attach a ridiculous amount of importance to them. Don't worry, Jen, I'll turn you. But I feel like, a well-written log line doesn't guarantee a good script anyway, and the thing is, I have pitched, like, for example, I did a series years ago on Lifetime about a woman who in her 40s who finds herself falling in love with someone outside her marriage. And it was a very tricky, emotional, but really funny show. We did 15 episodes. John Slattery was in it. It was hilarious. And people cried in every episode. And I found that when I pitched the log line, I got every door shut on me. They had to see the script. They had to feel what this woman was going through. And you can't fit that in a log line. Okay. So, I mean, I think a lot, like I say, it's a handy tool. I'm not saying don't do a log line. Absolutely do them. But it's kind of like, I don't put a lot of thought into how important is the law. It's like, basically, this is what I'm writing. This is the world. In a nutshell, it's this. So if you're interested in that, keep reading the rest. That's kind of how I look at it.
Can I say, Dan, I saw you responded to that, the writer, but I think you only did it to hosts and panelists. So I think you have to send it to everyone so she could read it.
I did, didn't I? Thank you.
I think it's just important to bring up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Joey, you obviously read log lines, like that'll be like the first thing that you get. So I don't know, how much weight do you put into that? I mean, I know there's some executives that literally won't read a script. And I will mention names. Chris Lockhart will not. If the log line is shit, he's decided that the script is shit, and that's it. You're done for. What are your feelings on that when you get a million emails with log lines first?
No, for me, I actually care more about the writer's bio than the log line, because
Talk
if I'm going to say it again,
talk to us about that. About the person's bio.
I feel like if they're just not good at log lines, maybe they just need a little finesse or whatever, it's not a big deal. But like, if I look at their bio and they bring so much excitement, whether it's a skill set or experience or something I connect with, like if they went to Jen's program and they completed it, I know they're a good writer. So like, for me, it's like, I want to look at that first, because when I pitch writers to execs, I always include the log line and I always include the bio. And a lot of times an exec will be like, this log line isn't right for me, but their bio is really interesting. So for example, I was pitching this writer a year or so ago. fine log line, interesting bio. I sent it to a manager at 3 Arts. He requested it, not from the log line, but request something in the bio really stood out to him. Signed her, got her staffed on the Mayans. So like, for me, it's the log line is just a calling card, but your bio, what you bring as a human being to all your stories, that is, to me, more important than the log line in terms of marketing.
Well,
I mean,
that's
what you do-
amazing. Yeah, Meg, please go.
I mean, if you're an emerging writer, or even me who hates writing log lines, you do, and I taught it and I still hate it. You do have to learn to write them. It's how you use them and when you use them is super important, and people have different opinions, but you still have to learn how to write them, because you got your film into an indie film festival, and fuck log lines, I'm an independent filmmaker. Well, guess what that program needs? So that people going through pick the movie they want to see. Log line, you want to apply to a fellowship or a program, log line, agents, log lines. You know, I'm writing a script and suddenly they're like, we're gonna possibly send this to a director. Can you give us a log line? And I'm like, oh God, fuck, I still have to write one. Like, and like Dan said, executives want them. So it is a skill to learn. It will help your brain, because to condense something into a log line is actually can be very hard. A lot of some stories don't want to be, and that's fair. Like Dan said, I totally agree. There's some unlog-lineable things, and then you go to the bio. But like, to do a log line, you have to know who is the main character, what do they want, what is the world, is there a genre? Like all the engine, a lot of the engine pieces are in the log line. So it's a super important skill to learn, I think, even because you will use it. But I agree with Dan. I do not create from it. It's something I do if I get lost in the weeds, or but I don't think of a log line and then go right, because that's just not how my brain works. Everybody's brain works different. My brain would completely shut down, because it would be like, fuck, this isn't working. I'm not following the log line. Like, no, writing's hard enough. I just want to, the log line will find me later. So it just, I don't originate from a log line, but I might use it as a tool later, and eventually you're going to need it and know how to do it. So I still recommend everybody go learn how to do it. And if Jen is the queen of teaching, I'll be calling you later.
and Joey's the gatekeeper to the managers. So but I guess also, Dan, it's like maybe when one is already in the system and you're already there, then it doesn't bear as much weight, because it's not kind of going to make or break the fact that your story is going to get produced or your episode.
I think here's the thing anyway. Here's the thing about log lines is like, they're necessary. You do them. It takes 2 minutes. Well, hopefully, if you really know your story, if you can condense it down to that, thank goodness. But then it's like, beyond that, it's like, yeah, it's just something we do. I don't know. There's a big move to stop us from doing them. So it's just part of what we learn, right?
I mean, it can be a development tool in that, where you can think about it this way. Like when we were at Pixar, if we were just completely lost in the weeds, because there's too many ideas on the table, there's too much in this movie, because we're trying to get at it from different ways. And this is kind of the same as idea as that, but it's not. And somebody else is passionately arguing for that. And it's too much. Andrew Stanton would say, somebody right now, tell me the golden book version of this movie.
Yeah.
Right now.
Right,
there once was a girl, her name was Riley, and inside of her head, and you literally have to pitch him the golden book version. I don't know, maybe I'm too old with that reference, which is the 6-page, tiny little pitch of the movie, because just to clear the air and get back to what is this? What is important? What is essential? What is the base of this? Why do we fucking love it? And it does sometimes help. And this is just for me too, because my brain is an overcomplicator. I am an overthinker. My first drafts always are way too complex. So trying to pull back and get up 30,000 feet, it can help do that when it's necessary. And if you as a writer have to figure out, am I using this to beat myself up, to get myself to stop writing, to prove that I'm a terrible writer? Then don't do it. Are you doing it to dive deeper into your story, to get clarity, to face the monster of the fact that you don't fucking know, but you're ready to go figure it out? Then do it.
I
Love
I-
that.
I agree with you. And part of this is, I think maybe I'm getting lost in the weeds with terminology, a log line. But part of what I think we're talking about is a sort of self-regulatory tool that should always sort of be on in the background of your head that you can go to and say, what's the story again? We're getting lost. Wait, what's the story again? Whether we call that a specific log line that goes in your document that submit, that's yes, that's great to have. But I mean, I always say, if you can give me like 25 seconds to say this, I'll go as fast as I can, that when you are writing, I think you are simultaneously three entities. You are the writer who is tapping keys and knows what page you are on and knows that you are writing this and that it's all made up and knows what page you want to end on. All that, you're the writer. Simultaneously, you are the characters who do not know you exist, do not know that they're making America laugh, that they're on television. They believe what they believe and they feel what they feel. And hopefully you can feel that too, so that you can write their truth, okay? Simultaneously, the third entity, you are the viewer or the reader experiencing this for the first time. So that when you write something that basically is what you just wrote, that viewer, reader in your head says, I already know that. And you go, okay, and you cut that. Or you make a little leap because in your head, you've got that whole story, you make a leap. The viewer says, wait, how did you get from there to there? I'm lost. And you always keep that viewer, that reader in your head who has never seen this story before and is trying to follow you point by point. And in a way that's kind of related to the whole logline thing. It's like you can get so lost in the details of what you're doing, and it is the high weeds, and you need that 30,000 feet, that viewer that's never been there, that logline tool in your head to keep pulling back and saying, wait, what is this? What is this? I think.
Yeah.
And you were on my phone call this morning. You were listening in because that's exactly what they said. They were like, but what about the people who haven't read the underlying material before? And I was like,
oh no, I'm so sorry. I just totally
I'm
made you
just
flash
joking.
back.
No, of course they were totally right. But of course they're totally right.
Oh, I hate that worst of all.
That's
One last
awesome.
thing I'll say about, like, in terms of marketing, it's frustrating when a writer just emails me just their log line. To me, that is like, I need more, especially when I'm marketing writers to execs. Like, I'll never just send the log line. It's the log line, tonal comps, format, genre. Like, give us a little bit more. Like, and I'm just talking in terms of marketing. Whenever you send a log line to an exec, don't ever just send the log line. Have the other stuff too to help them really know what it is.
Well, I see people in the comments are asking about bios, and I think Eve, you had a question about, you guys have a terminology, personal log line. What is it? I'd love to hear about that.
I know Jen, you're very big on the personal log line, and Joey as well. I don't know about you guys, but Jen, do you want to talk about
Yes, I'll talk to the log line and also the creative bios that I see a lot of people asking about. So the personal log lines for me was birthed out of, I did a huge event at the very beginning of my own business and doing seminars where I asked people, what are some universal life themes in your life? And suddenly people were talking for 15, 20 minutes, which didn't work. So that led me to say, what is the log line of your life? That led me to an exercise that became one of the biggest exercises in my brand and what I do with writers, which is when they write life log lines, then suddenly you find out you have 5 more scripts to write that you didn't think about. And when you look at a life log line, you look at the formula, which is the same as a fiction log line, which is setup of who, create empathy, dilemma, action, goal, twist of irony. And a hint that I'm going to tell you about log lines, both fiction and personal, is if you choose an adjective that is describing the void of your central character at the beginning of your log line, and we get a sense of how the goal could be a step toward filling that void, then we feel the transformation. Then we see the transformation. Then when you look at creative bios, as someone who did Writers on the Verge for 13 years, when we would get the essays and we would go through, NBC would go through 2,600, send me the top 30 writers, you're really looking at what I would look for is how do the essays, the life log lines, the log lines of the script all link? So how am I getting a full view of the writer from understanding their life themes through the essay, which is the same as a creative bio. A creative bio is bringing your resume to life. It is adding a voice so that we get a sense of who you are as a writer. And those essays for the fellowships are the same thing. So that gives you an idea of what is the voice, who are you, what are you writing about, and why. And then we look at the log lines. I would look at what are they writing about and how am I feeling the themes of their lives coming alive in what they're writing about. That for me is how I identify writers who get it, who understand how to absorb life and pass it forward.
Jen, do you have an example of a personal log line so that we can understand?
I do in my book. Let's see.
What's this? Do you have a book?
Grab.
Well,
I have in my book. It's all about life log lines. So
well, Jen,
it is.
Joey.
All right, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Joey, I know you've got a big thing about this, and also you said something amazing about voice. Like, does the voice kind of link to the personal bio? Why is that important? Jen's told us why it's important to her in her process that she's worked with writers on the verge, and you have explained a little bit about why it's important to you. Just talk to us a little bit about that.
I mean, it really comes down to, with the log line, the personal log line is an exact answering the question to the exact why are you the perfect person to write this. And in terms of the bios, the bio is so crucial. I'm like obsessed with a really good bio. It just has to be 5 I mean, it doesn't have to be anything, but in my opinion, 5 sentences covering where you're from, any training that you have, what your personal logline, what connects you to your stories, contest placements if applicable. Now look, I know there's 5.7 billion competitions out there, so just naming like the few that actually execs will know about, and just maybe like 1 sentence about you. The bio is a way for an exec to know that you bring more to the business than just this one log line, that you have the training, that you have other things going on, that you bring stuff to the table. It's also a good way for an exec to find common ground with you. So the manager at 3 Arts that requested that writer script I was talking about before, it wasn't even necessarily off the log line. He just so happened to go to the same college that she did. I didn't know that he did. I don't know that connection, but I see managers and execs requesting a script because there's that common ground. I was a lawyer, or I went to that school, or I'm from Boston or something. It's good to have that common ground. It makes them feel less inclined to say no, because now it's like one of their people. So I think the bio, every sentence should have a different idea, so something else that they could connect with. And I think that's a really strong way to make a bio.
That's great advice. Thanks,
I know
Joey.
one thing we're doing around the fire in Africa, because someone's going to have to help me with my personal.
I know.
All right,
I-
Meg,
Jen.
I got it.
Jen,
Yeah.
they're asking if you can put your book title in the
Okay,
comments.
so the book
at some point.
storyline, finding gold in your life story. Oh, here, I'll put it, sorry. Let's see, and then I'll give you a few life log lines. Thank you, or did some, yeah, thank you, Eve. All right, so here are some life log lines just to think about that I put on my personal life log line sheet. So my first life log line, which gave to the birth of my company, was after an ambitious yet overworked and disillusioned studio executive loses her job. She redefines her direction by opening her own company and helping others to realize their dreams while simultaneously realizing her own. So that's one. Then another one that reflected, my mom had cancer. So I had a log line that reflected that. A saddened and distraught daughter, plagued by the thought of her mom's illness, must learn to calm down some of her mind's busyness to be in the moment and see the beauty of the present before the time is past.
Love that.
Yeah, no, that's That's awesome. And by the way, I just want to tell you all, and those of you who may want to come on Safari, in terms of introductions, everybody writes a personal log line, including partners.
Oh
Yes.
boy.
Including what? Wait.
Lots
Ho,
of notice.
Who?
Anything.
Yeah.
Oh my
Write a
God.
personal
We can
log
argue-
line?
Yeah, we can argue about it later, but I'm just
Okay,
letting you
we
know,
will.
it's brilliant. It's so brilliant. It
Fine.
worked brilliantly last time.
Fine.
And I think it's
Fine.
also like important
Yeah,
too
you
with
can
your
write mine.
personal log line that if you are going to put that in your bio, make sure that it connects with the log line that you're actually getting out there. If you're talking about a personal log line that's why it's so important for you to write a certain kind of genre, and then you're pitching something that's completely different, it's going to hurt your case. So if you're going to have a personal log line, make sure that the stories that you're pushing out there connects to the personal log line. Sometimes the
Yes.
bio could mislead a writer or mislead an exec rather to be like, well, they're spending so much time talking about their legal background, but they're pitching a fantasy sci-fi that's nothing to do with it. I don't see why this person is the perfect person to write this. So it does need to be connected.
That's brilliant. I've never actually kind of joined those dots. That's very cool. Okay, guys, so should we just move it? There's so many questions. I don't even know where to start, but there's one from Bella here that I just thought maybe this will link into that. You know, everyone's different and features are different to TV. But what would you personally say would be the 3 to 5 steps in the process as a checklist in terms of eating the script elephant in your own areas of expertise, like, you know, say comedy or animation or TV or whatever it is. Dan, should we start with you?
No, because I don't understand
yes.
the question. I
Yeah, I
don't
didn't
understand the
question.
question.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
when Meg
either.
answers, I'll get it. And then
No,
will.
I don't understand the question either.
No.
So, okay, so
I
let me
understand.
Everyone, you people-
Jen's doing it. Jen's going first.
Jen,
She
you
understands
do
the
it.
question.
I did my notes before when Eve sent questions. I was like, all right, I'm gonna write
Okay.
them all up.
I didn't do my homework. I didn't do my homework. Go, Jen.
Me either. The two writers did not do their homework. The two
Not at
executives
all.
did their homework.
No.
Because you're so busy doing homework with the writing. That is a lifetime of
My
homework,
homework.
by the way.
I'm working on my
Uh,
personal bio.
Yes, exactly. So steps that kind of go into the idea of, so this, do you want me to give the internal story steps or just the basic steps for writing a
whatever
TV
you think's
pilot?
the best approach. If internals,
Okay.
whatever you think.
Okay, so for the internal story, so steps that I tell writers to think about is number one, what makes your characters stuck when we enter the story? So I'm finding more and more cable shows like Mayor of Easttown, Hacks, Ted Lasso, our flight attendant are dealing with the idea of why is the character stuck? And that links back to either the earlier wound that happens right before we enter the story or the childhood wound. And with the understanding of that, you're able to start thinking about what is the transformation. So then number two, how does the inciting incident or series trigger and dilemma create the desire to heal the earlier wound? So what you're recognizing with number one is there's an earlier wound that didn't heal and it's making you stuck as it links to getting to the dream. And so how does the series trigger and dilemma create an opportunity for an external plot that can allow you to heal the internal dilemma, which is what number three is? How does the external plot provide an opportunity to heal the internal dilemma? And then the last question is, how does the character do the emotional work? So when we look at Mayor of Easttown, we know that she's stuck because the trigger incident that happened before we enter the story is her son committed suicide. We see that she's stuck in the external story when the chief said, how come you haven't found the answers to the Katie Bailey case? We'll later learn that Katie Bailey went missing around the time that Mayor's son committed suicide. So we see Mare do the emotional work through her job, number one, the therapist, number two, her daughter, who she and Shaban share the same wound with the loss of Kevin, and then the love interest, Richard, is how we're able to see if Mare is able to move forward, because she sees that her ex-husband has moved forward and is engaged. So that gives you a bird's eye view.
Can I ask a quick question? I mean, that's
Yes.
definitely for a limited series where you're going to have a
Yeah.
transformation, because let's just call it network TV shows, which I don't even know if
Right.
that's appropriate anymore, but there's a different kind of TV show, right, Dan, where you're not transforming characters. I'm watching it because every week they're going to be the same person and I love who they are and I love watching them. I mean, I'm just confused about that in terms of those steps for which kind
But
of
that
TV
would be
shows.
network versus streaming. So
Right.
it doesn't necessarily mean limited series, because streaming goes much deeper into the transformational arc, whereas network does not, correct, Dan? It's
Well,
starting
if
to.
you look at streaming as like one big story and episodes are like chapters, you know, if you look
Yeah.
at it sort of that way, then it's kind of, you feel you need some kind of forward motion, because people are watching shows like that in terms of seasons now. Oh, I liked the first season, the second season. They didn't used to talk about shows in seasons like that back in the old days. So if your show is structured like that, that's great. I feel like my own personal feeling, I could have my mind changed, is that what you're describing is very effective and very popular. I don't think it's the only way to do it. I think it is an
Oh, it's
effective,
not.
popular
I
way to do it.
agree.
And that's the thing, is like, I would like to just just keep people's brains wide open to crazy possibilities, because, you know, it's like, if we all latch on the same way to do something, everything becomes formula. And then why is your script different from the 50 other people who have gone through the South Africa thing and talked to mentors and everything? It's like, we all have to look for these different ways to tell stories. I tend to, you know, I remember back then, you and I've talked about this a little, Jen, in the old days, like back in Cheers and stuff like that, about 3 times a year, and we did 26 episodes a year. About 3 times a year, we would have a character in a vulnerable place tell a story about their childhood and why it was so important for them to achieve whatever they were looking for in this episode. And it was effective, and we knew it. And so we were very careful. It was like plutonium. We didn't throw it out every week because we didn't want it to be, oh, that again, you know? And so but somewhere in the last 20, 25 years, somebody somewhere up high recognized, hey, those are good episodes. We want it every week. And what happened was I ended up on a show on CBS a couple of years ago, and we got that note every week. Have a character talk about something that happened in his childhood, and it became a formula. It sort of deadened the whole thing, at least in sitcoms. In drama, actually, you need that like really deep, rich stuff. But in sitcoms, it just became a trick instead of a cool, awesome tool that we could go to illuminate characters. And so I'm always going to be the one on the side saying, that's really good. Always police yourself so it doesn't become formula and then become empty. You know, we're all writers, you know, and that's our job, is to never rely on, never say, this is the way to do it. Once we do that, we're not writers anymore. We just take dictation in a way. You know, I think I'm
No,
a really
I do.
old cranky
I
guy.
do think some characters come and they want to tell their story the way they want to tell it, and they break form and they change the way we think of stories. I mean, for sure, it's just developing your sense of interior self and getting enough feedback that you can start to realize as a writer, yeah, that's not what I'm doing. I'm actually cheating. I'm avoiding. I don't know what these answers are. So I'm yelling that this is this is the new way to do it. But in fact, it's not. Or it truly is, because it's so effective. And people are just like, oh, like you have to be giving your work to people and getting feedback so you can get some experience with that. And I also think, for me, the way I always look at anything, and, you know, Jen, people are asking you to put it in the chat, the 5 things. I literally wrote it down in my scribble hand. Like, I love stuff like this. I'm a story junkie. I love this stuff. I love it. But I have to be super careful that it's tools to take onto the clay. It's not the clay.
Yeah.
I don't ever start with pulling the clay up with those tools. It gets shallow. It's I don't know what the fucking metaphor is. It's just dirty. It's not hefty, versus the clay is this thing that will not leave me alone. And this idea just keeps coming back. And my agents and managers might be saying, yeah, you can't sell that. I'm like, I know, but he won't leave. So
yeah.
fuck it. Like I was with the first thing that I got, actually what I got Captain Marvel off of was a spec TV pilot that I wrote on my own, that my manager said to me, if you had asked me, should I write that? I would have said no. Because it can't sell, blah, 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 but it would not leave me alone. And it was insane. Like it was nuts. It was about a guy who keeps a girl in a box under his bed, right? But Kevin Feige told me he did not know what was going to happen. Like he was in. So that's what you need. You just need to get these people who read thousands and thousands of things in, which is emotional, which is that all this stuff we're talking about. And if it helps you, which it was going to be, believe me, tell Jen, I'm taking these 5 things back to the TV show I'm working on. I'm going to do it because it might show me something. It might shine a light on, oh, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. That's okay. It's just, they're just tools.
If
Exactly.
I can piggyback on that, I think it's really important. I think that whole thing, how do you rise above, and you get them into the tent, you give them something where they can't turn away. And I think that's great. And they don't know what's going to happen next, but you better give them something you better end it. You better find it.
Yeah.
My ex-wife, who is a really good writer, she used to say, everybody can write a first act. And it's true. Writers finish the stories. Everyone, oh, wouldn't it be great if Santa was a zombie? And so they have to stop him on Christmas Eve or he'll infect the whole world. Great. What's your ending? I don't know. That's all I got. Now you take it. You're the writer.
Or worse, or what's your middle? I find, listen, everybody wants to stay in the first act and you just go over and over and over the first act. And they'll jump to the third act because they'll listen to me and I'll be like, what are the poles of your character? Where do they start? Where do they finish? What's the blah, 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 blah. And then the middle is like,
yeah,
like, no.
Here's treading water. Yeah.
Wizard of Oz is the yellow brick road. We all want to talk about the tornado and the munchkins and all that, but the movie is the yellow brick road and meeting those 3 people and blah, blah, blah. And the witch, that's the movie. So when you do a log line, I used to get log line from students and they wouldn't tell me the second act. And I'd be like, but that's the movie. That's what we're buying. That's what I'm going to read. You have to tell me the second act.
Yeah. And by the way, we do a lot of talk about the internal lives of each writer and why you're the right, you have this experience and you have that. Aside from that, you have to be a good writer. Yeah, having the experience and having this in your background, so you're the right person to do it is great. But you have to be a great writer on top of that. You have to take those things that happen to you internally and somehow crystallize those feelings and put them in an audience. You have to not only go inward, at the same time you're going inward, you are throwing your brain way out into the world to find those magic scenes, those things that you don't see every day, that are cool scenes without ever leaving the emotional palette that you're working in. So you have to connect these dots that are very far apart, that universal emotional dot and that cool scene no one's ever seen before, that really emotional way to do something that is so unexpected. And finding those things, that's the creativity part, that's the writing part, all the mining and all the underneath that, those are fantastic tools. But on top of that, you have to be a flexible rubber band of a brain to go out there and pull stuff back that you did not see coming.
I'm so glad this is recorded, because I'm pulling so much stuff of everything you guys said out of this. Cool. So I've got a question specifically for Joey, because so many writers always want to know, how do they get managers? And I just want to know what is it that you look for when you're trying to connect writers and managers? I know you've said that they need to have the connection of the bios to the story, and it's about the person, not only about the story. But what is your process like? And also, I know voice is important to you. You gave the most amazing description of how an example of what a great voice is. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about that. How would one email stand out against another email with bios and voice?
Yeah, well, 2 quick things first. Jen, if you want, I think you have to change it it goes to everyone, the 5 steps. I think you send it to the host and panelists.
Oh God, did I?
That's good, because now we can use them and they can't.
I mean, first off,
thank you, Joey. Oh my gosh.
Anybody's watching this, and if you are considering going to the Safari, if you're looking for a deep dive with characters, these 3, do any of these 3. That's definitely not my my wheelhouse. My wheelhouse is maybe doing one more polish, but figuring out what to do next, and branding, personal log lines, bios, and stuff like that. But for me, when I'm looking at a writer, If a writer sends me their stuff or somehow I have their script, I don't think I've ever read a script fully before I've sent it out. I'm very like excited by the first like act, I guess. Where if the writer has a good voice, because I know, especially for a manager, it's like the voice is going to be the most exciting thing for that manager. So for me, it's like, I feel, this is my opinion, that the description sections of a script are usually the most overlooked element of screenwriting. And that's what I kind of look for the most. I feel like writers spend a lot of time with their dialogue and characters, which they should obviously, but sometimes even when they check off all the boxes and I'm reading it, I'm like, it feels more like a book report versus a living, breathing experience. And usually the description sections are making them stylistic and making them exciting, and not every sentence starting with a character's name or a pronoun. It makes it pop more. So for me, that is something that's really important. Knowing that the writer also is a good person. Doesn't matter how good your script is. If you go into a meeting and you're not able to own the room, if you're not able to have a conversation, if you're not able to make the rep, whoever, feel excited to be with you, it's going to be really hard for that rep to get excited about you. I've definitely had writers go into signing meetings and the rep doesn't sign them after the meeting. It's like, well, that person didn't engage. And that's something I feel like writers do a lot. They'll spend so much time on their scripts and writing their next concept, but then they lose out on some of the most important, like mechanical things, even like following up with an exec, how to follow up with an exec, how much stuff to put into an email, their bio, how to convey their personal log line. That's why I see a lot of writers fall by the wayside. And that's what I drill home a lot with our writers, at least my specialty, is like, okay, you have the script, but like, how do you get it to somebody and how do you keep that relationship going? And
it's so important what you're saying, because both in two different ways for me as a writer to listening, because on the first hand, you know, some writers are really good in the room and some are not. I mean, I used to work for a very famous actress as a producer, and she used to go, sometimes when the writer's really good at communicating verbally, I get worried that their scripts are going to suck. Like she was so used to writers not being able to talk in a room that she just thought that's part of being a genius writer. You do this, not this, right? And that's not, I mean, listen, some like people are amazing pitchers in the room, but you do have to learn for sure how to engage in those general meetings. I personally do it by tapping into the passion of what I'm talking about, the passion of what I love, the passion of the story I'm telling, as if it's so cool. Oh my God, this is so cool. Like, I don't care whether you like it or not, because I fucking love it, right? Like, they want you to love your story, because if you don't love it, why are they signing you or sending you out into the world? Like, they need to know that when you get that executive, you can do it. So that can just take training. That can just like working with somebody like Joey, and then, you know, it's also the communication of once you're getting notes, and do you know how to communicate with those executives and what to say and what not to say? Like, maybe I shouldn't have said what I said on my phone call today, but you know, even when you've been doing it for a long time, you have bad days. And, that's just, you have to learn about what's going on here. What, you know, you said this and then you said that, you know, communication. Guys, I'm trying to say, you don't have to be a great communicator. A lot of writers are not. A lot of writers are not great pitchers, but you can learn it. There are tools like Joey is talking about. You can learn this, and people, and that it's going to be so great. Joey, of course, now I have to have a session with Jen, and I need a session with Joey. Dan, you're next on
Meg,
my list.
if I ever talk to you privately, I would just faint the whole time. So, but it's also too, it's like for the pitch, when you're going into a meeting, the expectation, this is my opinion, when you're pitching to a rep or an exec, your expectation shouldn't be, okay, this person's going to sign me, this person's going to make me a millionaire, this is it, because you're putting so much expectations on yourself, you're going to give yourself a nervous breakdown. So go in, like, your expectation is, I just want to build a relationship with this exec. I just want this exec to be like, that was cool. It's not right for us right now, but we had such a great conversation before and after the pitch that I know this is a real functioning human being, that, okay, their pitch maybe was good, but it was that conversation before and after that I'm like, oh, I'm excited to keep working with this person. And I think that's important to know when you go into a meeting, know what some of those questions they might ask you will be. So you're not just focused on the pitch and you do a good job and they start asking you questions and you're like, wait, this wasn't part of it. I'm supposed to pitch and I'm supposed to leave. It's like, know what those human questions they might ask is, because that's why I see a lot of writers kind of getting nervous even more than the pitch.
Well, especially if you're, go ahead, Dan, jump in. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, thanks. No, I find that also, I tend to tell people if they're pitching to remember that it's a conversation and to remember that the person you're pitching to is in the room. And if you have over memorized your pitch word for word and you walk in, time for the pitch, and then you become a reciting robot, the person you're talking with disappears in the room.
Yeah.
And if they're gone from you, if you're just saying, and then the character goes, blah, 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 of course we all want that. You've got your jokes rehearsed and they become very stilted. And what happens if you're not in the room with that person you're pitching with, you can't tell when you're losing her or when they're really on your side or whatever. And you can find that if you are somewhat flexible in that room, when you see they're excited, you can kind of expound a little on that area. When you feel you're losing them, you can cut parts short and you can go to someplace else. But if you are relying on your word to word pitch, and if something throws you off and you don't know where you are until you get back to that word, it's just not going to be very fun for the person taking the pitch. You know, and I agree with Meg. I always say I'm selling my passion for the idea. I'm selling my excitement. You know, I'm infatuated with this idea and I want everyone to know about it. And everyone's got to hear this theme and they fall in love with me, in love with my idea. And
or they'll say, they always ask, you know, what TV show that's on the air right now would you wish you wrote? Oh, ask me that question. And then I'll talk for like 10 minutes about the great. Let's talk about it. I can't write the great. It's not what I write at all. But what I love about it is I love this and I love that. And then, and then mentally they're talking, and then I ask them, what TV show do you love right now? Like, it's also, you need to get to know them. Like, especially if it's a manager and agent, you're in that room to see, do you want this person representing you?
Well, you know,
why do they love you? How would they sell you? This is not a one-way street. Generals are not one-way streets either. Like, do I like this executive? What are their thoughts? And I know when you're an emerging writer and you finally get in the room, of course you're not thinking that way, but just try to absorb who they are, how they talk to you, how they speak to you. And yes, of course they can change their face. People do, but generally you can just, it just gives you more power. You don't want to walk into a general or any meeting that you're literally saying, please pick me.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're all thinking that. Of course we are. But that can't be the power base of the room. First of all, that's way too much responsibility on them. They don't fucking want that. They are looking for the diamond in the rough. They're looking for the gold key. You know, that could be you, right? Like, you have to have something that you're bringing into the room.
And they can feel that a mile away, that like expectation. And that gets them scared because they're like, if I can't perform and do this for this writer, is that writer their dream's going to be crushed? I don't want that to weigh on me. And also too, like what you were saying, Meg, is so important about having the conversation. I know just right from the start, when a writer's going into a meeting or a pitch, if they're present or not, is when the exec says, how are you? And the writer says, good, here's my pitch, blah, 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 instead of, how are you? Good, how are you? Like, having that back and forth is I know right from there, I'm like, oh, the writer's in overdrive and they're being a robot right now. They didn't even hear them say.
And you know, agents and execs sometimes love a little small chat. I'm terrible at it. I am terrible at it. But there are people I know who are so good at small talk.
Oh,
They're
you know what I do?
So good at it. I'm terrible at it.
What I would do is, and I sure do this, Google whoever you're going to meet, find out all their credits, because you'll find very often that they were involved in some weird project that only lasted 2 episodes that you happened to see and thought was great. If that happens, bring that up.
Oh, that's such a good idea.
Because if they say, because often they'll say, because they called you into the meeting. So they'll say, I'm a fan of your work or something like that, or I really liked your script. They go, I'm a fan of yours. You wrote this ... And they'll light up because it probably was some quirky passion project or something like it.
Oh my God. Somebody did this to me now that you're saying it.
It might've been me.
No, it was this guy who wanted me to write something. He was like, you know, I just love that online show you did, Break Room. And I was like, you saw that? Like 4 people saw that show. And he was like, oh, I loved this. And he actually watched it. I could tell. And I was like, I will do anything for you because you see me.
Yeah, an appreciation of the other person's creativity, along with the whole meeting that's about your creativity. It just goes a long way to bonding you as people, as human beings. And that's really at the heart of everything, isn't it?
Keep it the professional side. Like, don't go on their personal Twitter and be like, oh, by the way, I saw you went to running the other day. I go there sometimes. Maybe, you know, we'll run into each other. Like, make sure it's like, you know, keep it on the credit.
Yeah, that'll freak them out. Do it about their
Oh.
work and their creativity
Yeah.
and the projects they worked on. I have a question. Somebody asked a question, which I do not remember who it was because it's gone up on the chat, but someone asked about if you're not neurotypical, if you're neurodivergent and taking a meeting. And I think, you know, Joey, can you speak to that? I have an idea, but it's not my bailiwick. Can you, in terms of taking meetings, what would you say about that if you're not neurotypical?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, again, now, I think what's the beauty about what's going on now, and this kind of echoes a question that somebody asked earlier about diversity, is that there's not one stereotype when a writer goes in that the pitch should be performed in a certain way. Whoever you are, don't try to be somebody you're not. If you're more interior, if you have a different approach to things, that's fine. But just going in and really laser focusing on what your perspective brings to the pitch. I always say before the pitch, before you go into it, give an ease into the pitch. It's not just give me your pitch. It's a sci-fi drama, this, that, and the other thing. Go into a little anecdote about yourself that directly connects to the humanity of the story. And that's a great way for the exec to lean in a little bit. Like, oh, this is important for this writer. Before even reading their script, I know at least that there's going to be a lot of heart to it. And I think that's the beauty of pitching. It's not just about the story, but starting a little bit about yourself, whatever that is, bookending that in the pitch to make the exec be like, oh, this person brings a different perspective that I haven't seen before.
And I saw that exact comment, Meg. I was actually going to ask Joey about that. But what I think is really awesome, I'm sorry, I can't see your name. It also went up in the chat. But Joey, you do a lot of training with people. And that's what really also attracts me to you in terms of what you do, is you help people get through those, you know, those fears or whatever it is that they experience. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how you work with writers to actually get them ready for those meetings.
Yeah. Well, actually, first, Meg, I was curious, what was your answer to that? You said you had an idea too?
I just think exactly what you said, for sure. I think they're actually looking for that now, that point of view, different points of view, be that neurologically neurodivergent or anything. They really are. This is a very sweet spot, I think, right now, that has not been in the past. So I'm actually excited about it. But I just think whether you have a hard time communicating for whatever reason, shyness, whatever, you're not neurotypical. Again, I do think the passion for the story it's what stories do. That's why stories exist, because they cross over all of those other awkwardnesses that we have. So instead of getting your brain out thinking about them and putting your center of power out there and them and how they're reacting and what they did an eye flick and oh my God, right? Which you have to, I agree with Dan, you have to watch and be engaged with them. I believe me, once I had a guy who just came in from a shoot and he kept falling asleep and I would bang on the table every time his head would nod because I was like, and then bang, just trying to get him to stay awake. So you have to be, and you got to cut and stuff. But in terms of communication, the more you're just telling them the story, however you tell it, however your neurological brain tells it, that will fascinate us.
Mm-hmm. And that's so important because I tell writers too, you might be giving the best pitch ever. Everything's going great. The birds are chirping, rainbows are behind you. And this is the exec looking back at you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's hard because sometimes you might just not be connecting, but other times the exec might, you don't know, like maybe they had like the Meg phone call before this and they're not able to put on the facade and it hits them hard. So like, even though like you should be aware, it's like, it's not really your job to be like, oh, they blinked twice in a row. They must think I'm boring or whatever. Just being like present and just doing what you're supposed to do, because you never know how people interpret things.
I literally, the only time when I sold TV, both times I came out and I called my agent and I was like, well, they fucking hated that. I mean, that was crazy how much they were bored. Let's just move on. And then they bought it. Like you don't know. I mean, again, you have to engage and try to do it, but you might get an exec who that is just what they do.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing in their head, but outside they give you nothing. And okay, it's all right.
Well, guys, I mean, it's so fascinating listening to you all, and I feel like that's really what I wanted to achieve with this webinar. And you guys have got a great dynamic, but I know the time is marching on a little bit, and everyone is busy. I just wanted to ask one more question, and then maybe we can wrap up. Every single one of you clearly likes to help writers, else you wouldn't be, doing this mentorship. And I just wanted to say, how do you think that the mentorship or and on the Safari could provide additional unique benefit as opposed to what you guys already offer? I mean, consults, podcasts, that kind of thing. I mean, there will be pitching opportunities and stuff, but just in terms of your personal approach, what do you feel brings something unique to going on a retreat or mentorship like this?
I mean, Jen, you've done this once before. Like you.
All right. Yeah, I was going to say, I'll jump in. Okay. Well, first of all, there is nothing like this out there. I can tell you from going through it, I can tell you that it is the most unique and extraordinary life experience that you will ever go through. And when we look at writing is about taking these moments and capturing these moments in life and being present during them and bringing them to the page. And so when you have a retreat that is based around a very unique life experience of everybody traveling in a massive way and going on this unique adventure together, and then going through the transformation of what you think it's going to be when you get there, to experiencing what it is in the moment, to reflecting on what it is, it's going to bring your writing to a whole new level. And then when we do the presentation, you have the game drives first. So the game drives are what bring all this inspiration when you see the baby elephants, when you see the lions, when you see the hippos, when you get connected, that's where inspiration comes from. And then when you go to the presentations and you learn story tools, and I am totally of the agreement that you don't want anything formulaic, you want to learn, and then you want to use your voice to make those tools your own. That's what makes writing pop, and that's what makes executives notice writing. And then the writing groups mimic a writer's room. So in your writing groups, you are going to get something that is quantitative to your script, to where your script is at the beginning, to where your script is at the end. So that combined with what you go through emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and bonding with this group is what makes this an unbelievable life experience.
Well, thanks, Jen. You were a great contributor to
and Eve, wait, I have to talk about Eve too. First of all, Eve is like the most mind-blowing hostess that you can ever imagine. And she organizes the event from top to finish that just your head will spin. So thank you, Eve, for all that you do for this event.
Well, I hope that some of you will join, but I know that you guys you come a long way, and I always want to look after you, and I want you to have a great time. Yeah, I was going to. There's one person here who's been to South Africa before, and that's Meg. And yeah, do you want to tell people about your experience when you came many years ago?
Well, I was 20 something working illegally in London with a bunch of living in a boarding house with a bunch of Europeans and people from all over the world. And then I had to come home because my fake visa was going to be up. And so I just went to Africa because everybody talked about it. And I got in a big German army truck with 10 other 20-year-olds, and they drove us from Nairobi, tent camping, little pup tents, no luxury, all the way down to Johannesburg. This was a long time ago. It was still during apartheid. so I've been through it, and an elephant stepped on my tent one night and all kinds of stuff. So I'm excited. I'm excited to come, not only because I'm going to also bring my boys at the end, and I'm gonna put them through it, and not in the pup tent, but we're gonna go on safari. But I'm very excited about it because, number one, it's small in terms of my contact with those. I love Cinestory. I love those places, but it's a lot of people. And it's a lot of people. You're getting one-on-one with a few people, but you're never following up necessarily. You get a chance to talk to them, but did they get it? Did they not get it? I don't know, because then you're moving on. This is so concentrated. And I've done one other lab like this 10 years ago where you're coming back and back, and you're really getting deep, and you're really seeing what they're getting. I think it's can be a very empowering, profound impact on the writing. And then the idea that you're going on safari, look at things that could eat you, is really going to get, things up and moving in you. Like, you're going to be out of your world, right? Out of all of those rules and how the world works is all gone. So you're really going to get a chance to leave your world and come in and do this. And I know that not everybody can afford it, and not everybody can take that time. But for those of you that can, I think it'll be a really great experience.
Thanks, Meg. And Dan, what are your thoughts about coming? Because you're all booked and you're coming. So
Yes, no, I have to now. Well, you promised me an elephant, so that's why I'm going. Make no bones about that. I'm there to see an elephant. Well, the good news is I'll be honest, in America, I phone it in a lot. And in Africa, however, I will totally promise to mostly pay attention to what people are saying to me, and maybe think about some of the things I say back. And that's not something you get here in America with me. And so I think that hopefully the joy of seeing an elephant will infuse my ability to work with people. And also, here's the thing. One of the things that writer mentors talk about is like going out of your comfort zone. And I'm a bit of a hermit. I'm here in Cleveland, Ohio, in my little place, and everything is just so. And this really is I'm not a traveler. I've been to London, that's it. And so I love London. But so I'm actually practicing what I've been preaching for years and years. And I think what better time to do it than at a time when I'm actually talking with writers who are exploring in their own way all the internal and external. Why not make myself go through it too? And I think that really will infuse the experience,
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dan. And Joey, I can't even explain to you the reaction when I asked Joey if he wanted to come. But Joey, tell us why, from a writing point of view and then a personal point of view, why you want to come.
Oh gosh, for a writer's point of view, somebody mentioned in the Q&A box about writer's block. And I think that stepping outside, even just from your house, is a good way to start freeing up your mind a little bit and seeing points of views. If you're kind of stuck, what better way to get unstuck than actually leaving where you are stuck and going someplace else and just getting a total reset. I think that's, and what better place to do it than in Africa. And for me too, one thing that I don't think we talked about, but I don't know if we could, but what we're going to do before the actual safari is we're going to do something special with writers that are in South Africa, and do something and teach them and do a workshop for them before we actually start the safari. And I think it's just so great to give back and to help writers. And I don't know, I've never been to Africa. If you know me, you know I'm terrified of flying. And I will say this, I wouldn't have done this, even if it was in Africa or Jupiter or whatever, if it wasn't for Eve and her constant
nagging,
being on top of things. What do you say, Dan?
Nagging, constant
nagging, but no, it was like being on top of things. Because I know it is not cheap. And it's, if writers are going and spending that kind of money, they expect a certain kind of quality. And it's the amount of attention Eva's put into this. I mean, we scheduled this in October. I was like, March, what's going to happen in March? But it's just the way she's on top of things makes me feel so comfortable.
That's such a good point, that we all know what, the writers that come are really, looking for something special. They're coming a long way. Mm-hmm. So I think that I know for myself, that I really do feel wanting to bring it for you guys and make it meaningful.
On the other hand, No, I'm kidding. No, I actually agree with, I totally agree with this. I mean, the thing is, it's like, people are putting themselves out there for this. You don't want to let them down. You want to like really kind of get in there and sort of impart, what you've got and cheerlead for them and support them. And what the thing is, I think it's going to be good for us too, really,
Well, Dan, Jen, you've met Chris, and so have you, Meg. Dan, you remind me of Chris Lockhart. He was exactly the same as you. He lives in his Beverly Hills home, and he said he doesn't like going anywhere else. He doesn't like traveling. And he said he was so happy that I pushed him out of his comfort zone. It was the best thing of his life. He was literally falling asleep on the couch. He was the poster boy of FOMO because he didn't want to miss out on anything. But guys, I just thought maybe I should just give you like a high level. There are limited spots available, but what it includes the 5 nights accommodation, drinks, all the game drives, also the airport transfers. People always ask me about that, and so it doesn't include flights. But just also so if you're on the East Coast, the direct flights to Joburg have opened up now. So it's like one flight. So that's like also simplifies things for people who are scared of flying, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want to say, like, thanks for the kind words, Jen, and everything. When I organized this and conceptualized it, I actually, if it was going to go off seamlessly, I knew it would be like an okay event. It would be quite nice. But what I never accounted for was people's reactions to the country and the different cultures and all of that. And the last time I felt one of the greatest achievements was the mentorships and the relationships that people built with their mentors. Actually, there was, I think she's on this call here. I won't give her name away. She went to go visit one of the mentors, 2 of them actually, in LA, and had a great time. And in this business, it really is about relationships and the friendships. And to me, it's the people that make it. You guys, I'm just so excited that you're coming. And for anyone else that wants to come, just, visit the website. It's Screenwriters Safari. .com, and you can RSVP and we can chat. I know it's not the cheapest thing in the world, but if you had to look at doing mentorships plus a safari, it might be worth your while and somewhere different.
And it's also a productive vacation need. You have to keep in mind, if people are working, it's a write-off.
Yeah,
There is
true.
that aspect.
Jen's always a businesswoman.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, she's always thinking the right way. But this has been such a great webinar, guys. Thanks so much. I love just listening to you. So there are so many questions here that I feel so bad that we didn't get to. But I think maybe, and I don't want to put you guys on the spot, I'll go through them, and maybe if I can send them to you and you guys can just answer them and I can email them to the people. You would be okay with that, just because we really didn't get to like not even a 10th of them. Would that be okay?
Of course.
Sure,
Cool.
we're chatty.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. No, it was
I
amazing.
promise I'll have them done like in tonight or tomorrow at the latest, or
Next year.
next year at the latest. At the latest.
The latest.
Maybe 2
Well,
years.
I'll be on you. I'll be on you.
I know.
But you're lucky because I first have to sleep and I've still got a full day's work ahead of me, and then I'll get to it. So you've got
No,
Linda has a good idea. Instead of doing it separately, then only the people who got asked the question, you could put it on your website. You could put all the questions
Yes.
and we'll answer
Cool.
them there.
Yeah, much better idea, Linda. Thanks. You're always in the background helping me. So thanks so much for that.
Thanks, Linda.
Okay, guys, listen, have a great Monday and a great week, and I will see you in person very soon.